meteorologist Chase Jones.
Well, it was a pretty clear start this morning, but those winds were still pretty going strong. But as the lunch rolled around, they finally died off, and we're going to cool down pretty quickly underneath these clear skies, and we're going to warm up all the way into those 80s by the beginning of February. But we're already tracking the next cool down, and it's looking pretty shaky. We're looking at the temperatures over the last 24 hours to get a good idea of how warm it's going to get and how dry it's really going to be, going from those mid-30s all the way up into those lower 70s, and we're holding strong right now, but we're already on the cool down, and we're going to be in those mid-60s, and we'll see how quickly we find our way back down into those 30s, 70 in San Angelo, or everybody else in a combination of those lower 70s, those upper 60s across the entire Concho Valley. Getting a good look up there at Sterling City, 67, 71 down there in Junction, 4 degrees across the entire region. So getting a better idea of this air mass as it makes its way through. Definitely very dry out there. Take a good look at the dew points and the humidity indices way down there in those teens and those 20s, as well as the humidity indices with those dew points across the entire region. Now, that's not something we really want to see. Hopefully we would see more moisture, but when we start to look at the moisture tracker, just a whole lot of shades of brown making their way in. We really have our eye mostly off the west coast, because when we look at the atmospheric setup, we're looking at some high pressure off the west coast of California, as well as the Bermuda high somewhere around the Gulf Coast region, and they're going to work together and keep a lot of these systems mostly to the north. Not something we want to see. Upper level pattern going to show you where these high pressure systems are floating around Baja California, and they're also floating around Florida right now. Off the west coast, we're watching that cutoff low work in tandem with this high pressure, pushing a whole lot of moisture into the west coast of California. Now, we're on the lookout for some of those mudslides. We're also on the lookout for about 100 inches of snow, so that's a lot of moisture and not a lot of time. But what does that mean for us here in the Concho Valley? Nothing but clear skies and hot, dry weather. Now, that's not something we want to see this early in the season, because we're talking about severe weather season, but that's where we see that shaky cool down. Now, when we're looking at this hot, dry weather make its way through, we're keeping our eye on to see this moisture over the Rocky Mountains to see if it doesn't make its way into the Concho Valley. We look at the severe weather outlook, and it's moved off towards the east coast with a little bit off the west coast, but we take you down to the surface and you're just seeing a whole lot of winter weather alerts for the entire Rocky Mountain region. Now, we take you down to the futurecast, because really just keep your eye off the west coast. Nothing over the Concho Valley, just tons and tons of snow and rain. So definitely the focus will be there all week, and I'm going to be watching a lot of those storm chasers in the area. Look how interesting that snaking effect is there from Washington all the way into Wyoming. But down here in the Concho Valley, a little bit of instability works its way in from the Gulf Coast region. That's where we have that sort of shaky cool down. So tonight, all the way down into those 30s, definitely going to see those breezy conditions. Then tomorrow, a good run at those mid-70s, but Steven's getting a better look at how beautiful the first day of February will be. By the time we get to Sunday, we're floating around those 80s, and by Monday, all the way up into those upper 70s. Now, here comes that cool down we were talking about. We drop about 10 degrees down into those 70s, back up into those 80s, all the way down into those 60s. Then we jump right back up into those 70s, while those overnight lows fight back and forth between those 40s, those 50s, and those 60s. Stay tuned on more of the break. You're watching KSAN News at 5.